Hey everyone, back with another review here. I'll review a movie called Anonymous that a lot of you have probably never heard of, honestly, because it didn't do well in theaters at all and doesn't have very well-known actors in it at all. One of them is up and coming, but I don't think he's done very many movies. I'm looking away because I'm on my laptop here trying to look this up. I don't know how to pronounce his name exactly. I think how you spell his first name is R-H-Y-S. He's going to be in Amazing Spider-Man movie this summer, actually playing the villain, Dr. Connors, Lizard. Um, and there's also a gentleman that plays a character named Ben Johnson. And everyone in this movie just did a great job. From everybody that played Edward, the main character, to Shakespeare, to Ben Johnson, to Queen Elizabeth. They were all great. And they all deserve way more recognition than this movie actually got. Let me look here. I give some. Rafe Spall played William Shakespeare, which I've heard that name before, but I'm not recalling where. Looks like the guy's name that played Ben Johnson was Sebastian Armesto, and Queen Elizabeth was Vanessa Redgrave, which I've heard that name before. And it looks. I'm probably saying it wrong, but it looks like the guy that played Edward was Rhys Ifans. I'm not. I know I'm not saying that right, but all these people that I just named were excellent in this film. And anybody that doesn't know what this film is, it is a film. Basically, I'll just read you what it says on here to make it easier. Well, according to IMDb, one of the sites I use, the theory that in fact Edward de Vere, Earl of Oxford, who penned Shakespeare's plays, set against the backdrop of succession of Queen Elizabeth I and Essex of rebellion against her. There's more than one storyline going on here. Shakespeare basically, Edward doesn't want to, since he's the Earl of Oxford, doesn't want people to know that he's a writer because writing in this time in 1601 is considered blasphemy and it's considered a sin, part of the devil's work. So he has somebody else pen his work. But Ben Johnson, he doesn't believe Ben Johnson has the right voice to pen his work, so he chooses William Shakespeare to do it. Now, William Shakespeare is, according to this movie, illiterate. And he's very cocky, too. I'm not sure if history tells that or not, because I've read Shakespeare's plays, but I've never read the history of Shakespeare himself. But I'm trying to think of the first thing to say about this movie. It's not a movie to watch if you don't like films that jump around a lot, because this movie jumps from present time, well, which would be 1601, to about 30 years earlier to in between, all in this movie all at once, without even warning you that it jumps around. It'll jump from Edward, Earl of Oxford, being 22 years old, or however old he is, to being present time, without even warning you. So if you're a person who can't pay attention to a movie well enough to follow that stuff, I wouldn't even recommend watching it. But my star rating for this movie would be a 4 out of 5, simply because of the jumping around part of it. I would give it a 5 out of 5, honestly, if it wasn't for that, because the acting is excellent, the story's great. It's interesting to hear the history of someone that might have written Shakespeare's plays, because I admire Shakespeare's work, his writing. Hamlet has excellent writing to it. And to know, or to think about, somebody else may have written that, and you're not appreciating someone who may have not even had anything to do with it in the first place, who couldn't even write. Because according to the movie, Shakespeare could read, but he could not write. Because towards the end of the movie, something gets published of Edward's, and he gives William Shakespeare credit, and it shows Shakespeare walking down the road reading it. So you see that he can read. There's a scene where he's with Ben Johnson where he cannot write, which doesn't make sense to me, but that's how it is. There are a few twists in this movie, which I actually enjoyed it because it wasn't just a straight up he stole his ideas, which the trailer doesn't give this movie what it should have, because the trailer misleads you, because in the trailer it tells you that Shakespeare stole his ideas, but Shakespeare did not steal Edward's ideas. Edward gave him the permission to use his stories, but it ends up being bad because Shakespeare becomes this cocky guy who thinks he's the greatest writer ever because people appreciate his plays. And one of the things I did like is they show the Globe, which is what they call the theater that Shakespeare built in London, England, which It's not as eccentric, honestly, in the movie as I thought it was. When I hear the Globe, I think of this huge eccentric theater that like hundreds of thousands of people can go and see a play, which it's probably. I mean, no, I don't think any place holds hundreds of thousands of people, but I was thinking of this huge play, and it's not. It's just this dome-shaped like small building with 3 levels where people stand around and watch a small stage in the middle of the theater. That's all it is. And like I said, when I thought of the Globe, when I was reading about it in history books, I thought of this huge, eccentric place, and essentially that's not what it is. Um, but Shakespeare is pretty much a bastard in this movie. He asked for a lot. There's a couple of really good scenes that I liked as far as the directing goes, as far as the scenery goes. There's a scene where it shows Edward and he's looking out the window and it's raining, and like the emotion in his face as the rain's coming down the window, the shot was just perfect. There was just something about it. And the other scene I liked, before I talk about the ending, the other scene I liked was when they were doing the stage play of Hamlet, when they quote the part of to be or not to be. They do so well in this movie with that part. It's because they use some kind of like rain, and it's so emotional in the scene. It makes me really just want to go out and watch somebody perform Hamlet out in a theater somewhere. I mean, this movie will make you want to read Shakespeare. If you're not a fan, I recommend. If you've never read any Shakespeare, I recommend Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet. Those are my 2 favorites. Macbeth isn't bad, but I like Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet. But I will talk about the ending of the film, some of the twists in it. So if you do plan on seeing this movie, and I highly recommend that you do, please don't watch the rest of this. Just pause it and shut it off, whatever. There's a scene, probably 30 minutes before the movie ends, where a man named, hang on just a second, sorry, I'm doing my research while I'm doing this. It's William Cecil, that's his name, and he tells Edward that the relationship that he had with Queen Elizabeth when they were younger was an incest relationship, because you find out that Queen Elizabeth had 5 bastard children, and Edward was her first bastard child, and nobody ever told him. And these two have a child together, and he finds out that not only is it his mom, but it's also the mother of his children. It sounds gross, I know, but he never knew this, so it's not something like he controlled it. And he says, he screams, "You lie," so you never really find out if Cecil was telling the truth or not, but I'm kind of thinking he was. There's a couple of scenes that are very confusing. Like somebody said, I was reading some of the reviews about it before I did this, and somebody said that the Queen goes from being kind of senile as she gets older to not being senile, and I think the person that said that didn't get that it was showing different scenes, because there's one part where it shows the Queen and she's talking to Edward, and then the next scene she's on the verge of dying, and I think that's because it jumped from one scene to the next. Just like this movie does that a lot, and I mean a lot. I don't think I've seen a movie jump around so much, and that's why you have to pay very close attention to it. There's not really much else to say about the movie. You just have to kind of watch it. But I do highly recommend watching this movie. Just big of a Shakespeare fan as I am, I would love to find a collection of his works, which I now kind of wonder if it's not Edward de Vere's works, because this movie really makes you question stuff like that. But it's a very interesting historical movie to watch. If you like time period films, this is definitely one of them, because the actor that plays Edward de Vere does an excellent job, and I cannot wait to see him in The Amazing Spider-Man this summer, because I think he'll do awesome as Dr. Connors, and I hope his career takes off after this, because he definitely deserves it. Tomorrow, we will be doing reviews of The Vow and Safe House. We're going to see those tomorrow. We'll have those up tomorrow night, and Friday, we should have reviews up for Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance, and This Means War. So anybody that watches our videos, we will have 4 new videos up by the week, and I hope that you enjoyed this review. Thank you, guys.